Ladies and gentlemen, we are counting down the days now until Eldorado Championship Wrestling NXT is live again here on the ECW network, courtesy of Twitch TV and YouTube. And on this first episode of ECW NXT 2K19, we are going to find out what is next for the ECW NXT champion Matt Black. We saw the conclusion of the ECW NXT championship match at Money in the Bank 3. Bobby Mitchell was involved in the finish of that match, getting involved, costing Eric Silva his championship opportunity at Matt Black, allowing Matt Black to retain the title in a controversial outcome. All-Star champion Brandon Wolf was also involved in that altercation. We're being told that RPJ will be live for NXT to address what is next for Matt Black and his ECW championship. And be sure to stay tuned for that exclusively here on ECW NXT.com. Also on ECW NXT, in this next episode, we will have a first look again here at more exclusive Velocity Limitless Division action ahead of the Limitless Division Invitational Tournament. The Netherlands Superman Evan East returns for more singles competition as he takes on the debuting Street Geek Austin Drake. Should be a very exciting look here. We've seen Evan East not once but twice thus far in competition here in Eldorado Championship Wrestling, but this is our first look at another entrant in the tournament to come. It'll be a very interesting matchup here, as you can expect more announcements on the Velocity Limitless Division tournament to come in the coming weeks following this episode of NXT, and more news as well on the rest of the entrants, the bracketology, and our upcoming two pay-per-view events, Tribute to the Troops and Takeover 2. Speaking of Takeover, the British Hit Squad made their debut at the last Takeover event, attacking American Justice. The rivalry between these two teams has spilled over and made quite the headlines here on NXT, leading up to Money in the Bank 3 at Tag Team Turmoil, where the British Hit Squad was involved, as well as American Justice. American Justice taken out backstage by the British Hit Squad, removing them from the championship scramble. Tonight we have a rematch on NXT, still yet to come. Justice Gable, American Justice, will be taking on Trevor Adams of the British Hit Squad. The hostilities between these two teams continue to peak, continue to reach new heights, and we will see where this goes next. Contendership up in the air. What's next for the tag team titles? A lot of uncertainty, but we're going to find out to come on NXT for certain. Speaking of, the much anticipated debut of the Savage, Jamal Bedlam, is slated for this episode of NXT. Found out recently Jamal Bedlam not only has signed a deal with NXT, but will also be participating in the Limitless Division tournament as well. Raven Silva, also who we've seen on NXT in recent weeks, will also be a part of that tournament. We are getting another preview here of Velocity ahead of schedule as Jamal Bedlam debuts, taking on Raven Silva in singles competition. To be a very interesting look ahead at what they expect, a clashing of styles here and personalities on NXT. Then this episode to come. Stay tuned to see what happens here when the Savage makes his arrival exclusively on ECW NXT. Also, speaking of Velocity Invitational news, we have a big Fatal 4-Way match ahead of us here for our co-main event on NXT. Dallas Chandler and Tyler Watson will be joined by Asher Crane, the Idol Killer, and the Crash Poet Alex James. Four men who have had recent one-on-one bouts here. A lot of tensions on the rise for these four men, but this one is for a much bigger prize, as one of these four men will take on Walter Scott for his ECW NXT Hardcore Championship come Tribute to the Troops 3 in your house. Also, all four of these men have been announced for the Velocity Limitless Division tournament, so expect fireworks when we see these four men go at it for a championship opportunity ahead of Velocity's premiere. And then last but not least here in the main event, folks, on NXT, Anthony Adams, the infamous one, makes his awaited return. We haven't seen him in over a month as he takes on Brandon Wolf, the Call All-Stars champion here Of course, we spoke about earlier Brandon Wolf being involved in the altercation with Matt Black, Bobby Mitchell, and Eric Silva. There's no question that Brandon Wolf has been eyeballing Matt Black and the NXT Championship. But first, before he can be considered a contender, he's got to go through a former #1 contender, being Anthony Adams. And that will go down in the main event here on NXT. A lot of big matches happening here, a lot of news ahead of Tribute to the Troops. We're anticipating news coming for TakeOver 2 from RPJ as well on this episode. And, of course, we're counting down just weeks from the Velocity Limitless Division Tournament premiere episode on the ECW Network as well. So, folks, with all of that in mind, join us June 9th on Twitch TV for our next live streaming episode of ECW.